All right, what's going on, guys? I'm Stevie J. Hit us up on Twitter, Stevie J PTX. Got Camber with me. This is Midday Due Diligence, a part of Pick Six Sports. Camber, what's going on?
Hey, it's great to be here, Cowboys Nation. You guys have no idea. I mean, I know everybody's been excited for the beginning of this season to finally start, and we're days away from it. But Stevie J and I have been holding on to a little secret that we have this show coming up. So we've had a double countdown, and here we finally are.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, my laptop was like, "You have internet." Just kidding. You don't.
Psych.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So glad to be here, guys. I mean, we're really excited about the upcoming season, of course, and we're really excited about getting this show started. So the first and foremost, of course, there were some things that kind of came down. You were talking about Jordan Lewis before we hopped in the broadcast. As of right now, what do we know about that situation?
I do not know what the extent of his injuries is. I do know that their last practice, he was still with the group doing rehab on the side. He wasn't, in full practice. We have one full padded practice, and that'll be Wednesday. And I guess that'll be telling. If not, we are going to see one Deron Bland out there in our slot in the defensive backs.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you talk about some of the guys who had great camps, and Deron Bland, he definitely stood out this past summer, and even going back to the spring, even going into the preseason games. Deron Bland was a guy who was consistent, and when it comes to rookies, especially defensive backs, you're not necessarily looking for the splash play. You're looking for the guy who can play at the highest level and who is the most consistent. And so Deron Bland, even though he is a rookie, and even though we haven't had a ton of luck with fifth-round picks here in Cowboys Nation here in recent years, he's played well and he's played the part. So I'm really, really excited to see if not only will he fill in, but getting notable snaps week one of your career against Tom Brady. I mean, come on, you're talking about a really tall task for a guy. So we hope by all means that Jordan Lewis is there. I mean, he's a veteran. He's a guy who's been a part of this team ever since 2017, I believe it was. I think he was taken in the Taco Charleston draft.
Right.
Excuse my language. But
don't. It is Tuesday. I know it's Taco Tuesday.
I know. So all in all, I'm not too terribly shaken if the veteran Jordan Lewis is not able to get on the field, or if his reps and snaps are limited in the game. But of course, we're going to have to see how the rest of that shapes up as practice goes on throughout the week.
And Tampa Bay, and we need to remember, Tampa Bay's wide receiver core, they're not without some problems either. They've got some injuries. We don't know if we're going to see Godwin on, Chris Godwin on the field. Russell Gage is questionable right now with some injuries. So, they're not 100% healthy. We have in Cowboys Nation, we've been very shaky about feeling about our wide receiver core. They've got some issues over there too.
Well, and the guy who really, toasted the Dallas Cowboys last year, Antonio Brown, he's not with the team anymore. Gronk gave us a little bit of trouble last year. He's not there, even though there's whispers of Gronk murmuring a comeback, which isn't going to happen by week one by any stretch of the imagination. But, you can take comfort in the fact that, you know what, these guys who really, really gave us some issues a season ago may not be available, may not be there. And especially when you talk about Anthony Brown and the way that he played throughout the season, it was one of only 2 or 3 games against Tampa Bay were the ones that gave him trouble. Outside of that, Anthony Brown had a career year.
Right. Totally agree. Yeah. And Gronk not being there. Gronk, that presence up in the middle right there, he's not there. Their 3 tight ends right now, they're still vying for tight end 1. There's word that Cade Otton, the rookie out of the University of Washington, go Dogs, is actually vying for that first spot. So, he's up against Cameron Brate and Kyle Rudolph. So I don't see as much threat in the middle there.
Yeah. and we're going to get to some more of the talk between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll break down that game a little bit more. But as we get into the show, of course, the big news from over Labor Day weekend, the Dallas Cowboys add their left tackle of
God.
the season as to what his role is going to be. But a Texas boy comes home. Jason Peters is a Dallas Cowboy.
I can say, okay, and we all need to be realistic. We don't, nobody needs to think that he's probably going to be jumping in right at left guard. I have issue that it took them so long to bring someone else in. We know what Tyron Smith is, and we love Tyron Smith when he's on the field and he's playing. It's solid, but he has not played a complete season since 2016. And it wasn't if Tyler went down, it was when. Well, guess what? It happened before week 1. It didn't happen in week 8. So I don't like the lag that it took them to get Jason Peters into camp, but at least he's here and we've got a very seasoned veteran. I mean, I don't think you could ask for someone with more of a resume to come in and be in this spot. So.
Like I said, that internet's doing what it wants to.
Oh no.
So it's all good. But yeah, and here's the thing about signing a guy like Jason Peters, and I'm with you. I take issue on when they did it. I have a big problem with them waiting until this time. But on the same note, it's kind of like, thank goodness in a way, because even though we never, ever want to see our own player go down, especially a guy if Tyron Smith were to go down as the season actually got underway instead of when it happened. So it's really, really unfortunate that we lose one of the best players, arguably one of the best players in the franchise's history when you look at the totality of his career. But at the same time, oh man, there's a little silver lining of the time that it happened. The only problem with that is, shouldn't you have had a plan to begin with? I mean, like Camber said, this is a guy who's missed time for the last 6 years, and he keeps getting older and he keeps missing more time. I mean, let's see, 17, 18, and 19, he missed 3 games apiece. Okay, like that's we can work with that. We can work with missing 3 games. If Jason Peters misses 3 games with the injury history that he's had in his career, I'm all for it. I will be elated. But Tyron Smith started missing 15 games. Then he missed, how many was it? 5 or 6 last year. And now he's going to be out for arguably the season. So there was no other determination, conclusion other than this was just poorly done on the part of this front office. And thankfully for them, for the Dallas Cowboys, they were kind of able to find this backdoor way to cover themselves. And we say that, but at the same time, Jason Peters still has to come in, be in shape, and play well.
Right. And I don't know if Jason Peters took quite the same line that a lot of the players do that think that they're retiring and they didn't do anything all season. He doesn't look like he's way out of shape and it's going to take him long. I think it's just him getting used to the scheme and the way the team operates and everything like that. Going back to your thought of them not doing enough, I think they thought they did enough by having Josh Ball. We all love us some Let's Go. I think they did their due diligence there, but then he went down and he got hurt. And the minute that he got hurt, and now you're relying on 2 rookies in that position, one is injured. They should have, to me, and I don't know if they hadn't started the search at that point in time, but the minute that Let's Go went down, I would have been searching, and I would have been searching harder. and not waited until the long holiday weekend, a weekend before the season, to get Jason Peters in here and sign him.
Yeah, and my issue with it from the get-go, I mean, you talk about, well, let's go as kind of their backup plan. I have no doubt that he has traits about him that can develop into a good NFL tackle. The only problem is you're talking about a rookie fifth rounder. And if you followed me throughout the draft, you're going to know that I want to put no stock into day 3 rookies. I don't want to rely on them. You get it. We were just talking about Deron Bland filling in for Jordan Lewis, but you're talking about a slot, and you're talking about the third corner on the team. You're not talking about a left tackle. You're not talking about the guy who's protecting your most valuable assets blindside. So at that point, if you're relying on a 5th round pick to rookie, not someone who's developed and come a long way. Remember, Jason Peters was undrafted. Yeah, he was a tight end at Arkansas. So a guy who's been able to develop and, but they were going to rely on a 5th round rookie or a 4th rounder who was in his 2nd year after missing all of last season with an injury. It's poor planning on their part from the beginning. And now, even though we're kind of warm and fuzzy and feeling good about having Jason Peters on this team, we're one Jason Peters injury away from being right back where we were just a week ago when Tyron Smith went down. So it's still, even though we feel better about it, it's still a little bit of a shaky situation for the Dallas Cowboys on that offensive line.
And let's not also forget that Tyler Smith is dealing with an ankle sprain. And I did verify it isn't. Jerry went on 105.3 The Fan and said a high ankle sprain. It is not a high ankle sprain. He would not be playing if it was a high ankle sprain. But we still, another injury. And, so it's.
Yeah, and a high ankle sprain ended Tristan Wirf's season last year. He didn't get to play in the playoffs, and then he dealt with it all throughout the offseason. And I mean, think about it ended his playoff run. So now you look at Tyler Smith and Jerry Jones says high ankle, and then Smith is back on the field in like 3 or 4 days. That kind of blew me away. I was like, okay, which is it? Because it ain't both. He ain't both out on the field and dealing with a high ankle sprain. That sort of thing doesn't exist. No man on this planet is stepping out on the field after 4 or 5, 3 or 4 days after suffering a high ankle sprain. And if he does, then Tyler Smith is Superman and he can go out there and play whatever position he wants. At this point in time, we want to talk about how the Jason Peters signing impacts the way this offensive line is going to look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking, honestly, I would be shocked if we see him week 1. So we're looking going into week 2 or week 3 before I think we personally see him on the field. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. But having him on that blind side for Dak and that sheer wall, I think we're going to – I was really worried about our pass game. I was worried probably more about the pass game than I was the run game on that side. But it's totally, like you said, it's giving me the warm, fuzzy feeling. I feel that we're going to have a lot more play action go on until then, that we're going to have to keep the defensive coordinators on their toes just because they know that weakness on that side.
Yeah, and I'm with you. This was always going to be a situation where Jason Peters would have to get acclimated. Think whenever they signed Anthony Barr. I think that's a good example. When they signed Anthony Barr, there was a ramp-up period. He didn't just step out onto the field and start practicing. And when we're talking about just practice in regard to Anthony Barr getting ramped up. So as far as game time goes, yeah, it's going to take a second. Now, what's interesting about that, though, is last season, you saw Jason Peters sign with the Bears and then step onto the field. Now, I think that they had a little more urgent situation to have someone plug in and play at left tackle. Here, Tyler Smith has been practicing, getting reps at left tackle entirely too late into the end of the off season, and of course he didn't get any of that work in training camp. But man, I'm more comfortable with where they're at now than, to be honest, even before Tyron Smith went down, just because you felt it was inevitable. Now, Jason Peters could be inevitable, but at least that will give time for them to come up with something else, maybe, if they do.
Right.
And so I want to be sure that people remember, yes, Jason Peters played 15 games last year. However, he's missed a whole lot of time over his career with this injury or that bump, that bruise, whatever it may be. So you very well could still see a situation where a Josh Ball or a Matt Waletzko has to take over and play. But as the case right now, it looks like they're going to go with Tyler Smith week 1 against Tampa Bay, let Jason Peters get ramped up, and they're still kind of playing this game, Camber, of we're not going to tell you at all that Jason Peters is going to take over and be the starting left tackle in week 2 or 3. They're kind of playing this over. Well, you know what? If Tyler Smith is doing well at left tackle, then we might want to give the young man all right, whatever, man. I mean, just I get it, but
they're not going to say it because Steven and Jerry likes the whole league talking about it. So, no.
Well, not only that, but they like
to everybody over in the chat. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That too. We can't take their fanfare. Everybody in the chat, we do see you guys. No, we're not. This is like the first day of kindergarten for us, or first day of high school, and we're still trying to remember where our locker is and the combo on it. So we see you all. Keep commenting and throw up some questions for us and everything. But we probably won't be very active in that chat today. But we love you all and thank you for being here.
Oh yeah, we appreciate you guys, and it is like kindergarten. I mean, I've got glue for lunch, as a matter of fact. But so back to Jason Peters and talking about him, and we'll wrap up the Jason Peters talk. But I thought this was interesting, Camber, and I kind of think this has gone overlooked. No matter how you feel about PFF grades, the thing that stood out to me in his PFF grading was that he was not the same run blocker that he's been in the past in gap runs. However, he's still a plus run blocker when it comes to zone runs. And of course, that's what the Dallas Cowboys do. They had that very weird experiment with Paul Alexander back in 2018. We kind of get blinded because of the Amari trade that took place that year. But a lot of people have to remember that something that also happened was Paul Alexander got fired mid-season, and they went back to a zone blocking scheme up front, and they've been better ever since. But as far as Jason Peters goes, he was still a very good pass protector. He was a plus zone run blocker as well. And I think that is really what makes this such a good fit for him to be a Dallas Cowboy.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that, if they move Tyler Smith into guard, or it's Conor McGregor, I always want to say Conor McGregor. We don't need him out there on the field. McGovern out there on the field, that they work well together, because those two positions can go very hand to hand. And sometimes I want to go back and I want to look at who was playing next to Jason Peters in those situations. And did that affect him in some way with it? But hopefully our left guard position is solid. And we could keep moving right on down the offensive line and skip right over Zach Martin and talk about each one of those in our concerns.
Well, it's funny because I was talking with Nix. We were on Space earlier this week, and it just kind of bothers me because we don't feel confident in Terrence Steele's backup as Josh Ball. We don't feel confident if a left tackle does go down, the depth there. Left guard, we feel pretty good about what Tyler Smith can bring to the table, but not necessarily what Connor McGovern brings. Center is a question mark as well. That looks like they're going to go with Biadish and Farniok. I think Farniok should be nipping on his heels, but you don't know the politicking that's going to go into it. I mean, they literally kind of handed the job over to Biadish while Farniok was on the field in preseason games playing extremely well. But it seems like no one really has a lot of depth behind them on this offensive line.
Farniok's your backup guard on both sides.
Yeah, well, Connor McGovern actually plays well at right guard, but I don't.
No, don't even say it. Don't say the words. Do not say the words.
But that's the point, is why do we have no depth really on the offensive line except behind the mainest of mainstays that we have? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, Farniok being the backup left guard, even though I think they would still go with McGovern, unless Tyler Smith is playing left tackle and then you got something happens to McGovern, then you get to Farniok. But man, that just does not sound like an ideal situation. So week one, you're probably looking at Tyler Smith, Connor McGovern, Biadish, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele.
It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is
what it is.
But
all right, but speaking of that week one, now let's get into that matchup. Dallas Cowboys versus Tampa Bay. And last year, it was won and lost on field goals. I mean, Tampa Bay hit one at the end. Dallas had missed one earlier in the game. See you later, Greg Zuerlein. We are kind of glad your services are no longer here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, our kicking situation is pretty trash. So,
yeah.
That's pretty rough.
Right.
What stands out to you in this matchup, Camber?
That both teams have the same problems. That the Tampa Bay's offensive line was decimated during camp. They had a lot of injuries and a lot of people go down. And their wide receiver core is very questionable. Yes, they have some talent, but it's not the wide receiver core that people in their brains think that we're walking into, that, it's Chris Godwin, it's Mike Evans, Julio Jones. We're probably not seeing Godwin at all from what I've heard. He won't be in game one. Russell Gage is hurt. This is going to be, I think, whoever's defensive line and secondary can destroy the other one more. Honestly, it's going to be a defensive battle for me, is what I see.
That sounds like Jalen Darden's season.
Right.
Shout out to the Mean Green. Yeah. For all of you draft buffs out there, if you remember Jalen Darden from the 2021 draft, I think they ended up taking him in the 4th round or something of the sort, straight out of Denton, Texas. So,
yep.
They
have him on their punt. They have he's their punt returner.
Yeah. So might see a little bit of time as a, wide out. So he's probably in the same situation as Cavante Turpin is with the Dallas Cowboys, still a little bit down the roster, even if they do have some injuries, but opportunities could be there. And Turpin is certainly, he's been so hard to not talk about because of what he did in the preseason. Even Bones, during his press conference, was like, we loved it, but we also kind of hated it because now everybody sees what we've got. And I don't put too much into that. I would rather a guy make plays whenever he can make plays, as often as he can make plays. I want the world to know about the guy. I want them to fear the guy. I want them to look at him and say, I'm not punting to him. This thing is going to be angled that way. So at the end of the day, I'm curious what Cavante Turpin can bring in week one. We're talking about first time action, the real deal. At the same time, he's 26 years old. He's the age of a veteran. He's been through some stuff. He obviously was removed from football for good reason and then showed some contriteness, put out some work in himself to get himself back into the game. And then the Dallas Cowboys picked him up, and we see exactly why he has made his way back into the NFL. But whenever it comes to this matchup between you, I think that the defensive fronts for each team are going to determine which interior holds up the best. Now, I'm really curious what Worth's status is, because
Yes. Yes.
Worth's status is, from what I hear, he's going to play.
They're still showing him
From what
questionable, but from what
I
I've heard, he's
hear,
playing.
he's going to play.
Right. And even their starting center is questionable right now.
And you have they had to replace out for the season. They could be going with a thing about our defense. I'm really, really looking forward to how Dan Quinn, looking at potentially a third, and then I don't even know who the other guard is that they got. Marpet and Kappa are gone. One signed to the Dolphins or Bengals. I can't remember. They both just went crazy signing, but the other retired. So you've got a lot of new faces and a lot of new places for that Tampa Bay Bucks offensive line, and that's why I'm intrigued as to how Dan Quinn.
I think the tricky cat that's going to be on that team is they picked up in the third round Rachaad White, and that kid. I mean, yeah, he's not going to get the touches as Fournette is running the ball, but while he was at Arizona State, he had 21% of his yards were receiving yards. So he's a pretty tricky one that they're going to have to watch out for.
Is shaky. Sometimes instead of going by virtue of the pass, and that's something that a Tom Brady-led team has actually won a Super Bowl off of. I mean, remember James White and that ridiculous game that he had against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, and that's what they did. They used the passing game as an extension of the run game. So White is that's a great point. He's a perfect candidate for something like that. If your offensive line is shaky, all right, well, instead of just handing it off or dropping back, then we're going to toss this thing out, get wide with a guy like White. I mean, Fournette's not really a perimeter type of dude. I think his best days are behind him, but that's a good player to kind of be on the lookout for Tampa Bay is Rachaad White. And again, going back to you, NFL scout gurus who really enjoyed. I know that our guy Matt O. I think that Rachaad White, he was a big fan, and so we're going to get to see him week 1. That's so interesting as to how Micah Parsons is going to be played, because you might have Jaron Kearse covering a guy like that out of the backfield. Jabril Cox could be another guy who covers those backs and tight ends out of the backfield. And you have enough coverage linebackers and enough safeties who can cover tight ends and backs that I really, really think that the focus for Micah Parsons in week 1 should probably be rushing up the middle, coming off the edge, getting after Tom Brady. But I'm really, really interested to see what Micah Parsons brings to the table coming through the A and the B gaps.
Right. And I have to say, it's been a very, very long time that I have felt so good about not only our linebacker room, but also our safety room. I mean, to have the depth that we now have at safety is, you'd have to go back decades, I think, at this point in time. I gotta say that I think we're going to see Micah up the middle quite a bit, especially when up the middle, you're looking at Akeem Hicks and Vita Vea right there. It's, I absolutely hate that I have so many Huskies on this Tampa Bay team. I hate it. I have 3 starters on the defensive line. I've got 2 starters on the defense and possibly 1 over there on the offense. But no, I think we're going to have to see Micah up the middle quite a bit there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to move closer to my router right now. I think, I tried to get to like an empty space. I've got cats, and they're gonna jump all over my computer and do all sorts of things. But obviously, back there wasn't working. So I appreciate you guys kind of letting me know that. But as it is, yeah, I know they got a bunch of your Huskies on this squad, and that's got to be tough. Like I was saying, I'm a Mean Green alum, and so Jalen Darden is like the only. I think Jalen Guyton plays for the Chargers, so we got a couple in there, but it is kind of bittersweet whenever your guy makes a play, and you kind of got to be like, that's kind of cool. I'm rooting for the dude, but also don't do that this week.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll tell you what, on Sunday night, they're not my Huskies. They're Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then we can continue on after that. Yeah. But they are not Huskies on Sunday night.
Right on. All right. So let's give some predictions for this game.
Ooh. This game is okay. You know what? Just because I am known for throwing out some pretty wild, crazy predictions, this game is won on an interception.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go there.
All right.
With the way these offensive lines are hurt. And I think there's going to be a throw, and I don't know from either side. There's going to be a throw that might have been questionable if it should have been made. It's going to be one on an interception.
All right. Either way?
Yeah, either way. Yeah. No, you know what? This game is too close for me to honestly to call. I can see an argument for both sides winning. And so I honestly do not. I think that we're going to be somewhere. The score is going to be somewhere like a 17-23, somewhere in that range. It's going to be very defensively driven. It's not going to be high scoring like we saw the year before, I don't believe. But I think it's one way or the other on an interception.
I like that as long as it's a Dallas Cowboy coming away with it.
Mass is calling me Brian Broaddus running the fence. Quit it, Mass.
But hey, look, week 1, to me, Dak is set in stone. I don't know why people still question the guy. I don't understand why people are still against Dak Prescott. But my goodness, if he throws an interception at the end of the ball game, then you know what's coming to Cowboys Twitter.
Oh yeah.
They
overpaid him. He's not worth $40 million. And let's make sure everybody knows he's not getting paid $40 million this year.
Right. Well, aside from that, how much juicier does it sound for Trayvon Diggs to intercept Tom Brady to end the game? Let that happen, and I am going to be insufferable on Twitter. I don't know how many people exist in the Twitterverse, but each and every one of them, sports fans or not, Cowboys fans or not, they're going to hear about Trayvon Diggs picking off Tom Brady to end a ball game.
I'd rather it be Anthony Brown.
Well, I don't care who it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care who it is. But
no, just to shock everybody. Just really dig it in there that Anthony Brown did it.
Well, I mean, so kind of going back to what we were talking about at the very, very beginning of the broadcast, what if it's a guy that is new, probably shouldn't be playing in a ball game this early, late pick, a Deron Bland, a Marquise Bell? I mean, how about coming on the scene that way? Game
Right.
one, you end a game intercepting Tom Brady.
Welcome to
Ideal.
the
Living the
NFL.
dream.
Yep. Yeah. Be
Exactly.
fantastic. I agree. I agree. It'd be great if it was Izzy too. That guy, man, what a camp and what a preseason for him. You know, I had almost written him off, coming in and seeing the other talent that was coming in, and he's really developed.
Yeah, and that's a guy I'm glad that you brought up simply because it gives me an opportunity to tell everyone that I was wrong. I mean, at the end of last season, there were some people saying, all right, Mukwamu is my guy to kind of take that next step. And I was like, look, he fits the mold. He's everything Dan Quinn wants, the length, all of that type of stuff. But he left college as a bad tackler. His rookie year, he was a bad tackler. And tackling is something that is really, really hard to just suddenly get good at once you go into the NFL. I mean, everything only gets harder. It's not necessarily a technique thing, it's a willingness thing. And my goodness, he's not out there thumping folks. I mean, he's not Troy Polamalu or Ed Reed, but he's making tackles. He's efficiently bringing the ball carrier down, and that's really all you need. That was like the final step for him making the roster on a weekly basis and also potentially getting on the field. And we saw the coverage ability in the preseason. It was really just, we can't have a tackling liability out there. And now that he's not that, he could become a pretty important piece for this team, especially when you talk about from a depth perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree with that. And, you know, we absolutely needed him to step up for that depth in there. I know we have Donovan Wilson and Marquise Bell came in, but when you're looking at it, that Jordan Lewis hurt, Jaron Curse is questionable on my sheet right now, and I don't know why, and I'll have to check that out. This was a sheet that I got this morning, so I'll have to dig into that a little bit more. We're not even going to think about Jaron Curse not being on the field Sunday, though. We're not doing it.
No, and I actually think that even if you have depth, he is one of the toughest guys to replace right now. Obviously, Micah Parsons is irreplaceable, but when you go down the list, we saw this team win without Randy Gregory. We saw this team win without DeMarcus Lawrence. I think that might have been why they decided to go get a little more depth at linebacker, because Jaron Curse isn't just a back end deep third, center field type of safety. He's a buzz safety. He'll come down and play in the box as well. I mean, he does so much for this team that once you start talking about versatility, Micah Parsons stands alone, but then there's Jaron Curse and everything that he's able to do. So if, like you said, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about him missing time, but it's funny that you would probably need 2 to 3 guys to fill the roles that he plays instead of one guy being on the field at a constant.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's, and that's what's kind of nice about this defense is that we have several Swiss Army knives that don't fulfill one role. And, between him and Micah, I could actually see Marquise Bell fitting into some of that also eventually. So as I tweeted yesterday, in Dan Quinn we trust. And I truly feel this defense is probably going to be the dominant force on our team this year.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And especially, you know, they had a sneaky good offseason. What's really funny is we were very hard on this front office with how kind of complacent they seemed. Um, that ends up very true offensively. When we talked about Jason Peters, we were still like, look, what took you so long? You know, and not only that, but even though you signed Peters, you're still kind of in the same boat that you were prior to Tyron going down. A guy who's had all of those injuries throughout his career, we could be right back in the same place. You didn't do a good job preparing, da da da. But on the defensive side of the ball, it was like, okay, you lost Randy Gregory. What'd you do? You re-signed Dorrance Armstrong. You went and got Dante Fowler. You drafted Sam Williams. I mean, something's going to work out there.
No,
All
we've got
right.
some depth at edge. I mean, we've got some
Absolutely.
great depth at edge.
Oh, and that's not even, you know, DeMarcus Lawrence on the other end. And
Right.
then you include year 2 Micah Parsons, which no matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody thinks they signed or drafted this offseason, you don't have anything better than a developing Micah Parsons, who, by the way, his defensive coordinator knows how to use him now.
Right. Right. Well, I saw, and I hate to even bring up a Eagles fan, and forgive me, Professor O, someone saying that Nakobe Dean was going to be better than Micah Parsons. And I was like, oh, bless your heart. You know,
Yeah.
let's not.
No.
I mean, we need to be reasonable as football fans at times, no matter what team the other player plays on. So
Nakobe Dean's going to make a lot of tackles.
oh yeah.
He's going to make a lot of tackles. He's got some big space eaters in front of him, so he's going to be able to roam free and make a bunch of tackles, but he's not Micah Parsons.
No,
Nobody
you're not going to see
is
him
Micah
on the
Parsons.
edge and that speed. And no, it's just not gonna.
Yeah, and man, I that's why I go back to playing A gap or B gap with Micah Parsons.
Oh yeah.
Because of his ability, just his strength. I mean, anyone else, any other linebacker, when it comes to whatever it is their skill set is, they don't have it as broad as what a Micah Parsons has. He can drop into coverage. We've seen him run with receivers. You know,
Right.
Yeah. Now, granted, it was Kenny Galladay, so yeah, it wasn't that big of a task.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he did it.
He was on our offensive line for that one play last year.
Yeah, here's something I love is when Micah Parsons is in practice, like fielding a punt, you know, just jacking around. There's a part of me that's like, okay, maybe not punt returning, but there's a part of me that's like, give him a handoff. I mean, I'm just curious. I just want to see what a 245-pound man who runs a sub 4.4 can do with the ball in his hands. I'm down for that, you know?
Right.
But man, Camber, let's shift to the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, we're stoked about the defense. We're concerned about the offense.
Right.
How do you see them operating without Amari Cooper? He had a big week 1 against Tampa Bay last year. Where's that going to come from this season?
I mean, they put it on at this point in time, honestly. And I truly believe that week 1, we are marching out, and it's CeeDee Lamb is wide receiver 1, and Noah Brown's going to be wide receiver 2. Tolbert has not. I see the talent, but there's something missing. There's something not connecting. He's not completely there. He is not wide receiver 2 at this point in time. And so honestly, they're going to come out and it's going to be Gallup and Noah on the 2 edges. And, you know, they're going to run that ball, and we're going to see Zeke. They have many reasons to run Zeke this year. Number 1, to get their money out of him and have their star and everything. Number 2, to put the pressure on him, because they have that out clause next season on that contract. And so they can be putting that pressure on him. And if his numbers aren't there, it's going to be real easy to send him out the door and be like, oh, look, we've got Tony Pollard and we can pay him and we can draft another guy. So, but that's the attack I see. And I should say Dalton Schultz is going to be the number 2 target. The number 1 target is going to be CD. The go-to is going to be Dalton Schultz. And we'll go down the line from there.
See, I think that Tony Pollard is going to finally get the involvement that he deserves. They talked for so long. I mean, ever since his second year, I think 2020, 2021, we heard we want to get Pollard more involved. We want to get Pollard more touches. And it was just lip service. We never legitimately got it outside of the first 4 or 5 games whenever Zeke was healthy and they would rotate and Pollard made the most of his touches. I mean, there was a time after the first month of the season when they were both, Zeke and Pollard, top 10 rushers in the NFL.
Right.
And then once Zeke's injury hit, that kind of went awry just because they refused to sit Zeke and play more of Pollard. So it makes me kind of wonder, with them not addressing the absence of Amari Cooper, it makes me wonder if they are finally going to fill those touches, not the role, but fill those touches via Tony Pollard. And I hope they do. I mean, he's the most explosive player on your offense. I don't understand why you kind of hamstring, why you handcuff the most explosive player on your offense.
Our record is better when he gets, more than 12 touches or something like that? Our record.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. But how do you feel about them running the ball more this year?
Could I feel better about it if I felt better about our offensive line?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The better the O-line, the better you feel. That's
right. There has to be a balance, and I understand there absolutely has to be a balance, but there's also been a giant shift within the league that this has turned into more of a passing league than it was once in the day, the grindstone, running. Here's the thing. I don't have a problem with them running a lot in the beginning, but they need to adapt and they need to change the minute it's not working. I do not want to go back to the old Jason Garrett days of we tried it 2-3 times and then, oops, maybe we're going to try this. It was one of those, when you consistently keep doing something, like I go to the doctor and I say, oh, it hurts when I do this with my arm. And he says, quit doing it. It's one of those things. So, and I think it has to adapt like this offensive line. This definitely might be one that we run against, that we can pound through the middle and we can get some yardage because of their injuries. Now, do we get to say that the next week when we're against the Bengals? I don't know. It may not be that opportunity's there. So
there's a couple of really interesting things about this game when you look at it compared to last season. They avoided Vita Vea like the plague. I mean, they did everything that they possibly could to stay away from Vita Vea without Zach Martin at right guard. So we kind of looked at Connor McGovern and we were like, oh, you did a good job at right guard. Congratulations. Way to go, McGovern. Way to hold it down while El Presidente was out with COVID. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I thought that Kellen Moore did a good job of not putting Connor McGovern in compromising situations against Vita Vea. So they hardly even ran at all last season. I think they ended up with like 30-something total rushing yards, and they really just let Dak go to work. There was the quick passing game that was working really, really well. But I think you're going to have to run a little bit this time around because your number one is CeeDee Lamb. Fantastic. That's a great place to start. But then the drop off after that is pretty significant. And plus, they don't have Ndamukong Suh. They did get Hakeem Nicks, the former, I believe, was he a Cincinnati Bengal?
I think he was he with the Chiefs? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah. He's
right.
kind of
right.
he's a good player. He's had his injuries up and down the last couple of years, but I really feel like they will be able to run the ball. They've got more power with Zach Martin back at right guard. And of course, with Tyler Smith, that's the main attribute that he's bringing to this team is power over Connor Williams, who really struggled in that department. And what's funny is now on the other side of that for Tampa Bay, they're starting a rookie guard who is drafted in the second round who kind of has the same build and makeup as a Connor McGovern. He's 6'5", 315, a little bit of a leaner, lankier guy than what you would ideally start at guard. So I really think that the Dallas Cowboys will have success or more success running against the Tampa Bay Bucks this time around. And I think a little bit has to do with you're going to have to. You have to go that route because you got Zeke and Pollard, and that might be more than what you've got than what you have in the passing game.
Well, and I think a big difference this year, and everybody that knows me knows I scream about a blocking tight end. We now have two that seem to be blocking, and Ferguson and Hendershot could be a big difference in this run game for us because we literally saw last year that was a touchdown for Zeke if Jarwin hadn't missed that block. And so bringing in that personnel and having Ferguson and Hendershot in their blocking, because Dalton Schultz will probably block me for this, but we know he doesn't block. But Ferguson and Hendershot is I think a good key to this run game. Not just this game, but all the games going through the season, because blocking tight end has been a huge issue for us.
Well, to add to that, you talk about blocking tight ends. This is something that I'm concerned about with our offensive line, at least for week one, until they can get Jason Peters acclimated. And keep in mind, guys, if you're just now joining, the entire idea is that they'll get Jason Peters ramped up, and perhaps they're not going to tell us straightforward. They're being coy about it, but perhaps he'll be your starting left tackle in week 2 or week 3. Now, until then, it makes for an interesting situation with Tyler Smith at left tackle and Terrence Steele at right tackle. Now, Terrence Steele had a much, much, much improved season last year. The thing about it is, though, Kellen Moore was constantly sending help his way. He always had a tight end next to him. He had a back going that way to Chip. He had a lot of different guys who would come over and, hey, let me help you out here before I get out into my route. Now you're looking at a possible situation where you need that on both sides. You have a guy who struggled with his technique, who's very young, powerful, athletic, big, strong, but very young on the left side. And then Terrence Steele, how much has he improved in that area? Because if both of them need that kind of help,
right?
That's going to be tough to give both of them consistently.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't want to think about that. So we're just going to think that Terrence Steele has even progressed more, that he's taken the next leap and gone forward, and we're solid over there.
Okay, so final prediction. You gave me how the game is going to end, an INT, one way or the other, but do you have a winner?
Fine. I will do this.
You didn't want to.
I didn't want to. I didn't feel like I should or I could. I am going 24-17 Cowboys.
24-17.
I just threw a little bit extra in there. And I'm going to say, because I saw Professor O call me out as to who gets that interception, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to go even further out on the limb on this one, and it's going to be one Malik Hooker.
Malik
with an
Hooker. Hey,
interception.
I'll
Gonna
tell
go
you
there.
what.
Gonna do it.
How much did
Gonna
we
do
hear
it.
about Malik Hooker this offseason?
Not much. Not
Not a
much at
whole
all.
lot.
Not much. So
That's really interesting.
I think maybe he was just, there was other things to talk about, and he's just being that sneaky, sly guy in the background, and he makes that leap this year.
That's exactly what it
So
is.
that's it.
That's exactly the reason.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is a guy who, if he can burst onto the scene, remember he was a high draft pick. I mean,
Right.
there were some high hopes for him. You talk about, we were saying that maybe who were we talking about? It might have been Jaron Kearse. Maybe he's not that deep third center field type of safety who just goes and covers the entire planet. But that was the idea for Malik Hooker when he was coming out of college, that
Right.
he was just going to fly all over the back end and make plays left and right. Injuries kind of hurt him from being that kind of guy. He, jumped on the Cowboys last year on a cheap deal. You talk about a ramp up. I mean, the guy was coming off injury and he played behind DeMonte KZ pretty much all season until the final month or so. And then you kind of start seeing him come onto the scene. That's a great pick. I mean, I think that is a great, great player to point out because he's flying under the radar. We're not talking much about him, but he did play well at the end of last season.
Right. Right.
So my prediction, I'm going to go, I think this is a defensive battle. I think both teams really are going to struggle with their offensive lines. And so I'm going to go 20-16. Tampa Bay is going to kick a bunch of field goals in this one. They're going to kick a bunch of field goals in this one. So if you got Tampa
as long as
Bay's
they don't have
kicker,
LSU's kicker.
who is their kicker? I have no idea. Is it
that poor kid?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So there's our prediction for week 1. Let's talk about our prediction for the season, for the entirety, 17 games, NFC East, all of it. Camber, coming up, how are the Dallas Cowboys going to finish this thing out?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I thought about it, and I might be changing my mind. We're going 12-5. We're repeating last year. We're going 12-5.
Yeah, look, and I agree that it's going to be in that range. I got 11-6, but I think that they'll play more sound on defense. And I think the real test for Dallas Cowboy fans, especially those who question Dak Prescott, is how are you going to take winning a game that's 20-16? How are you gonna look at the end of a ball game and look at Dak's numbers and say he threw for 215 yards and a touchdown, and you won 17-14? Is Dallas Cowboys Nation going to accept that, hey, we went out and we won a ball game, or there's still going to be those folks who say, well, look at Dak. Dak's mediocre. Dak's not going to be able to do it. Dak's this. There's more to the game than the quarterback. He's the most important guy. As a matter of fact, quarterback's the most important guy in all of sports. But there's more than one way to win, and I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to lean on their defense. So, Camber, you got 12-5. I got 11-6. I think both of those are good enough to win the NFC East.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of talk about what the Eagles have done in the offseason, and don't get me wrong. Yes, they did some great things. But, two of those things. Okay. AJ Brown is AJ Brown. I mean, are we putting more into this than they acted like, all of a sudden they got Cooper Kupp. So I think that needs to be put into perspective. They did some great things on their defensive side. The bottom line comes down to it. Jalen Hurts is still their quarterback. And unless he makes that giant leap that I keep hearing every Eagles fan tell me about, oh, he's only in this year, blah, blah, blah. He's only played in this many games. Unless he makes that leap, like you just said, the most important person on the field is the quarterback. Then they can put all the weapons they want around him. If he can't get them the ball, then I do have us splitting games with them. I will be honest. That was one of my losses, is us splitting this season. But I just don't see them taking the NFC East this year.
Yeah, I don't either. And I could even see them dropping a game to one of the other teams. Like I could see the Eagles losing to Carson Wentz and Washington. And I got to say, that would be a little bit juicy. The Eagles losing to Carson Wentz. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go out and say Washington can win both of those games. I don't care. You know, I think that would just be such great. Like, I would get to sit back and just.
It's like a TMZ moment. A TMZ
oh my goodness. moment. I just want to see the meltdown. You know, that's all I'm looking for is the meltdown whenever Carson Wentz and Washington beat the Philadelphia Eagles. But you also have to be on the lookout for that sort of thing for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they do believe they've got a great defensive line in Washington. They've got some interesting weapons. They've got some really intriguing weapons in Washington, but I still think Dallas is going to come out and have the best defense. I don't see what all the hype is about for Philadelphia's linebacking group or the secondary or their edge rushers. You know, this is kind of the pot I've been stirring with the Philadelphia Eagles fans is y'all's edge rushers really ain't what y'all think they are. Brandon Graham missed 15 games last year, and he's 35 years old. Well, y'all just signed 40-year-old Jason Peters. Yeah, but he played 15 games last year and did well. That's what we're coming off of. You're coming off 35 years old and missing 15. You signed sense to me to really, really just be excited about those signings or that guy coming back. So when I look at how this season is going to end up, I really, really need the signature win. That's something that Dallas has kind of lacked here in recent years. They haven't gotten that signature win. And I think you can get that against Tampa Bay. You can get that against Cincinnati. I do think Philadelphia will be good this year. So you could look at Cincinnati or Philadelphia as a good signature win. And yeah, they did pick up Hassan Reddick. That's probably their best addition of this season. But outside of that, I mean, Derek Barnett.
We have to break the stigma of the Green Bay thing though this year. It's time. It's time to beat Green Bay and beat them. But I think they're getting overhyped, and I hope it is.
Green Bay?
Yeah.
I honestly haven't heard much about them.
Yeah. And I was listening to the Fan this morning, and there was not them. I want to say it's King, the guy that has predicted like the last 4 Super Bowl champs and everything like that. And he had Green Bay as the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I was just like, I'm not seeing it. It's a reach for me. So, but it's time Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers loses.
He doesn't have much around him.
No.
I mean, you know, there's really, I understand you have Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, most important position. We just finished saying that. But you lost Devontae Adams.
Right.
And
who's his best wide receiver right now? Is it Lazard?
Lazard?
Yeah, Lazard.
I guess.
And we're relying on Randall Cobb.
I mean, I'm just saying if you mock the Dallas Cowboys for relying on Jason Peters, but you're relying on the likes of Philly with Brandon Graham or with Randall Cobb in Green Bay, don't come talk to me.
Right. Right.
Don't come mention our name when you're in a very similar situation in certain spots on your own squad. All right, that's the
keep
way I kind of look
keep
at
my wife's name out your
it.
mouth.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So, with that, we've got 12-5 from Camber. I'm going 11-6. Either way, we both feel this is a team that can win the NFC East. Uh, I'm going to hold off on like playoff predictions just
Oh
simply
yeah.
because we want to see how the league is unfolding. How, the teams like, I mean, really, the AFC just boosted themselves like almost across the
Oh,
board.
that AFC West.
Oh my gosh.
Uh, Sign me up to watch almost every one of those games when they meet up. I
So
mean,
shout out to Professor O. He said that so Green Bay drafted both Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs, which is interesting because they're like polar opposites. Christian Watson was the uber athletics North Dakota State product, really raw, needs a lot of work to do, while Romeo Dobbs is the lesser athletic guy, but can run routes like crazy, is a nuanced player, a little bit ahead is in terms of those nuances than Christian Watson, but Watson is so explosive. He was a 4.3 guy. Dobbs was like I think he was a high 4.5, like close to a
right.
4.6. And so that's interesting that they took both of them, who kind of had differences in how they were coming out of school and drafted. So that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, you guys saying that Dobbs has had the better preseason. When you take what I just said about one of them is a more nuanced player, that's the guy who can come out and kind of have a little more of an instant impact than the guy who's just super athletic, because guess what? Congrats, you're in the NFL now. Everybody's freaking athletic. So the guy who knows the position a little bit better is probably going to come out and have a better start to the career. And then once that athletic guy, like a Watson, like a Christian Watson, puts it together, oh, that's when you really need to watch out for a guy.
Yeah, Professor just made a really good point. They took Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt,
Yeah.
and they passed up George Pickens.
Well, they were going Georgia no matter what, it seems then.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's interesting. All right. So here's where we're going to now. We're going to talk about a player. We'll probably mention a few. We're going to talk about some breakout guys for this season. And I want to do one on each side of the ball, Camber.
Okay.
But man, it's a little bit tough to find that offensive guy.
It is. It is. And I know you all think I'm going to say Simi Fehoko, and I'm not.
I saw it coming. I thought it was coming at least.
No. I mean, I might change my mind a little bit down the line if he starts to, but no. I mean, that one's kind of really hard for me to say, especially with so much unknown. And who knows how, he's probably essentially sliding into the Noah Brown role from last year at this point. So hard to be a breakout player at this one. My breakout player is going to be the man we ended up with instead of my tight end, and it's going to be Jake Ferguson. I think we're going to see great things out of him. Not only, not with the catches, but with the blocking, the way they're able to utilize him. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not a big glamour pick, but Jake Ferguson, I think, takes the step, and I think he takes a step to the point that the Cowboys really look at that they don't have to tag or pay Dalton Schultz next year, and that Jake Ferguson is going to slide right up into that role. And on a rookie contract, we all know that Stephen Jones is going to be more than happy to say goodbye to Dalton Schultz. I know I said his name. Catboy is going to be more than happy to have Jake Ferguson on that rookie contract and not be paying Dalton Schultz, especially with the numbers that we're starting to see some of these tight ends get.
Yeah, by all means. When they showed Darren Waller's contract that was coming up, I was like, do that. and do
Right.
that now.
Do it. Yes.
Absolutely. And
More of that.
I started looking at, all right, what other tight ends can we get like throughout the season to maybe start working on a deal, drive that price up. But yeah, you're starting to get into the range of thinking about. I think the number was 14 for Dalton Schultz, and that was before the Darren Waller contract negotiations where he got 16. So even though Dalton Schultz probably isn't a guy who would get Darren Waller money, it still drives his price up. You're still looking at 15 or so. And if you didn't want to pay Amari Cooper 20, why would you pay Dalton Schultz 15 or more? That would make no sense at all to me. And so you're right. They could be trying to get these tight ends more involved. They could be trying to, pushing like, hey, Ferguson, no, we drafted you. You're out there on the field. Go get it. Go make it happen. And that way it gives them a reason to let go of a Dalton Schultz and feel like they've got themselves covered. That's a great pick. I think you got yourself muted right now. I don't know how that happened.
No, sorry. My earpiece fell out, and I guess when it falls out, it automatically mutes you. But yeah, like I said, the pick wasn't sexy. It wasn't anything flashy, but I think it's for the better of the team if it happens. Like you just said, there's absolutely no way I think we need to be paying Dalton Schultz $15 million next year. And it's, I think Ferguson and Hendershot's going to be it going forward.
Would I be cheating if I said Tony Pollard? I
don't think so.
I'm glad you say it feels like cheating.
Go ahead.
Because you've seen it on display. You've just never been able to see it for a whole season. It's really only come in flashes. And so I'm like, hey, could be your breakout player, but we've also seen him ball out, so
right. Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit taking the easy way out. So here's the thing about picking these wide receivers, man, is we heard something about like each and every one of them in camp at some point. And then we fall off and hear from another guy. All right. So remember, it was TJ Vasher at the beginning with the catch, the big catch, right? Didn't hear anything from him after that.
Not even on the team now.
Then I think Simi Fehoko was the guy who they were saying, look, this he's probably having the best camp. All right. Him, Noah Brown, you kind of heard similar things out of that. Dennis Houston got the high praise from Dak Prescott. He's always in the right place when he needs to. He runs his routes well. So, man, you can pick a wide receiver. I think it's going to be like throwing darts at a dartboard at this point, trying to choose which one of those guys is going to break out. But they believe in Noah Brown. And depending on your definition of breakout, I think you could see him end up with a hot start to the season and somewhere in the range of 800 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. And if you're Noah Brown and you end up with 800 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, that is more than you've done collectively in your entire career times 3 or 4. So right. I think I'm going to go that route just because I don't think I think that choosing Pollard is cheating a little bit. I'm going to go Noah Brown.
I like it. I like that a lot. Especially, we're going to see, we're really going to see what he's made of until Gallup comes back. And that pressure's on. Yep. It's being handed to him. So, I like your pick. I like it. Good job.
So defensive side of the ball now. This one, you've got options.
I do have options. And, and I almost feel, and I already used his name, and I almost feel like it's cheating if I say Malik Hooker. But
Is that cheating? Is it cheating to say him?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so at all.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah. I think it's Malik Hooker's year. He's fully recovered from that injury. Like you said, he really progressed at the end of last season. I know he's been silent in camp, but has there really been much opportunity? There wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for him to have big flashes. Come game day, um, I have this feeling that it's his year. And yes, Gregory, my other option was Sam Williams, but I have a couple little problems with him and his attitude and stomping on people's helmets on the ground. I think he's got some attitude that they need to bring in, they need to pull in. We've seen too many we saw way too many penalties from him and bad penalties in the preseason. So I think he needs just a little bit more development. But and he is deeper. I mean, he is a depth piece right now at defensive edge and not starting, where I think Malik Hooker has got the spotlight on him. He's got the starting position. And I think Malik balls this year.
plus Malik's going to end the first week,
He is.
right? He's
He
gonna
is.
bring in that dub with that interception, right? So it
He
only
is.
makes sense.
He is.
My
So.
defensive player. This is boring. All right, you guys ready to be just certified bored at this pick? It's going to be Neville Gallimore.
I knew it. I was looking right at his name. I said he's going to say Neville.
And here's the reason why: because they put on the weight. They want him to play more one technique, and Dallas has been desperate for someone to help stop the run. All right. This is the ugliest figure that you could possibly give to Cowboys Nation. Last 2 playoff games that they've played against San Francisco and then against the Rams in 2019, the Dallas Cowboys gave up 440 rushing yards in 2 games. That is nasty. That is certified ugly.
Right.
So they need someone to finally fill in and stop the run. All right. And I think between their depth at linebackers, if Neville Gallimore can come in and be that 1 tech, 0 tech, whatever it is, whatever position you want to put him in, if he can fill that role, then you're looking at a completely different team. And finally, the defense will be complete.
That's a great pick. I love it. Yeah, the whole chat saying Neville, Osa, Neville, Osa. And we definitely, our interior defensive line improved themselves, and we can see it. We definitely see that they, right? Oh,
man.
As long as we don't ever have to think that Dontari Poe is the answer.
Or Nick Hayden.
Right.
The only good thing about Nick Hayden was the nickname. If you guys recall, the old golden cock. Yeah. That was ridiculous. Like, that's not to get on a high horse, but sometimes I love player coaches, the rah-rah coach. I love it, but you got to also be a good coach at the same, like you got to get some production out of them. So, you know, you can make us laugh and, you know, smash watermelons and give creative nicknames and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, what's the product on the field doing? So that's kind of why I had a few problems. Yeah, no, you're right, Massey. That was one of the last guys who could actually play the run. Him, Irvin. It's been ugly though, and so it's a boring answer, but I gotta have a 1 tech. I tried to get one drafted. We did get one drafted.
We did.
We got one drafted. Day 3.
Right.
Day 3.
Right.
I'm just really glad that they finally got a guy who they're saying, we're going to count on you, Neville Gallimore. Thank you for putting on an extra 10, 15 pounds. Now go up there and get no praise. Because that's what that job is. You know, you're going to go out there, hold your man down while a linebacker goes and makes a play. That's what your job is. And your name is not going to be any headlines. It's not going to be in the lights. But by God, we need it in a really bad way.
Yeah. Mass is yelling for his vanilla gorilla.
Is that Ridgeway?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ridgeway. Hey,
Yeah.
and Bohanna. Evidently, Bohanna has made some strides, and so not only do you have your starting one tech with Neville Gallimore, who's a veteran. He's dealt with some injury stuff. His rookie year, he didn't really play a whole lot. He was getting acclimated. You know, rookies, you know, they don't always step out onto the field and just start playing. But
Right.
I think that you finally got Gallimore, and then Bohanna and Ridgeway, whoever's just playing better out of those two. Not only do you have a 1 or a 0 tech, but you also have a little bit of depth behind him so that you can spare him some snaps, or maybe even move him over to a 3 tech to spare Osa some snaps. Or again, versatility. That's what this defense loves. They love being able to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I agree, Outlaw. Bo's pad level has gotten better. Still work to do, but it's gotten better. All right. Camber.
We did it.
We did it kind of on the fly. People don't really know what was going on behind the scenes.
Right. Right.
I
But
mean,
we're here.
there was a point in time we were like, maybe it happens, maybe it don't. We'll
Right.
see.
we were like, was it Jamal Adams at the Jets putting in the code and couldn't get in the door?
Oh my gosh. It's actually a better analogy than what y'all realize. It's going to do it, guys. We appreciate y'all jumping on with us. Camber, where can they find you on Twitter? Where can they find your work?
That you can find me on Twitter at TOO_MuchCamber. And you can always catch me here with Steve on the Midday Due Diligence. I have another little surprise for you with our own Massey on Thursday. We got a little more extra midday action going on. And then on Friday nights, you can always see me hanging out on Freestyle Friday here at Pick 6.
There you go. And check me out right there, Stevie J, PTX on Twitter. Also writing for Fansided. Check out our stuff there. And of course, cannot wait. Usually this is going to be on a Monday following Dallas Cowboy games. The easiest way to remember it is the day after a Cowboys game. So if it happens on a Tuesday, it's because the Cowboys played some Monday Night Football where the entire world was watching. Now, with that said, we'll see y'all later. We appreciate you guys jumping on with us. Camber, it's been a lot of fun. You guys in the chat, thank you so much as well.
Thanks, guys.